If you're thinking about working with me, you probably want to know a little bit about me. Well, the accent might be a little bit of a giveaway, but I'm actually from the northeast of England. And my journey with body composition goes back to being a teenager. I was a sprinter when I was a teenager, and then I got into weights to strengthen my legs for my running. And before I knew it, I was on a bodybuilding stage at the age of 17. Thankfully, I won that first show. It was a great experience. But what it did for me was, so I'd been training with weights even as a teenager for performance. But when I did the bodybuilding competition, that first one, I was blown away that these weights could change the way I looked. And that's kind of where my obsession, fascination, excitement started, and it continues to this day. So I was competing from the age of 17. I won everything possible as an amateur. Every show I won just about every show I entered. I won the junior British, the overall British, the European, the world. I did all that stuff. At the same time, I was doing a degree in business and finance, so I did that. And then at the ripe old age of 25, I had both my professional bodybuilder's card in hand and I had my degree in hand. And so I hoteled it to Australia, where I lived in Surfers Paradise in Queensland for a little while. Then I was heading home, and it was November, and I was like, oh wow, I'm heading back to England. I'd given up my job, my car, boyfriend at the time. I'd given everything up to go and live in Australia for a little while. And it was November. I was leaving summer and I was going back to winter. Anyway, that plane landed in Los Angeles where I had a layover. And I don't advise this. I got off that plane and I didn't get back on. So my worldly possessions were in a bag on my back, a few dollars in my pocket. And but what I did have was Gold's Gym, Venice, California was right there, a few miles from the LAX, the airport in Los Angeles. And so I walked into the mecca of bodybuilding, the epicenter of everything fitness, which is Gold's Gym Venice. And that gym became my home for the next 25 years. So I arrived in California, and then somebody said, you're a professional athlete. You know you can get your green card in America. I was like, okay. I had all the documentation to go back to Australia. I had all the points. I was the right age. I was planning to go back to Australia. And in my head, I thought it was cool. So I was like, okay, I can already know I can go to Australia. I'm English. Let's get this American green card. Why not? So got an attorney, started that process, thinking I'd be done in maybe 6 months. I think it took me 11 years in the end to get my green card. But what happened there was to work legally, I could only work as my identity as a professional athlete. So I couldn't use my business degree. I couldn't go out and get a job. I could only work as being a professional athlete. So I was in Gold's Gym Venice, so I started a training business. Now, if you're going to succeed in Gold's Gym Venice as a personal trainer, you're going to have to be good. You're going to have to be very, very good. I think at the time when I started, there was 140 trainers in there. And, the members could have been trainers themselves. The level was just so, so high. But I started my personal training business. And I undoubtedly became one of the most recognized personal trainers in Gold's Gym Venice. And I was there for 25 years. And it was a very successful business for me there. What happened there was I became known as the trainer that whose clients changed. And I know that sounds strange because shouldn't people change? Well, the reality is they don't. People can train for decades, and most people do, and they don't really change that much. But my clients changed. So I've trained plenty of names that household names like Chelsea Handler, Demi Lovato, Dangerfield, Wayne's brother, you name. I've trained a lot of people that you know. And the reason they came to me is because I kind of became known as the person that got people stage ready, competition ready, cameras, lights, action ready. So why could I do that when other people weren't really able to do that, or their clients didn't achieve that? Because from that tender age of 17, I wasn't just excited about the weights and the training, but I was really enthralled with the physiology of body composition. So the nutrition, the physiology of it, the hormones, the enzymes. I would be buried in books and highlighters and microfiche at the time, and I just always been doing that. So when I've been working with people, it's not just not the training. I know the pathways they need to be on. I know the nutrition side. I knew, and I was able to explain it. So my clients changed, and I changed. So I won everything as an amateur in America. I did pro shows. I did the Olympia a couple of times. I broke the top 10 in the Miss Olympia, which is the highest show there is in the bodybuilding world. But then I was kind of done with that. The reality is I never actually wanted to win the Olympia. Isn't that a funny thing to say? My goal was always to get on that stage, but I always knew I just wanted to get on that stage and then kind of get off that stage. So, which is what I did. So I retired at the tender age of 30 or 31, I think I was. And I built an extraordinary amount of muscle, more muscle than most people would deem attractive or that they want for themselves. But I was competing in this sport, and it was bodybuilding. And the sport of bodybuilding changed a lot from when I was doing it at 17 to when I was doing it later on in my career. The demands of the sport changed a lot. So I had this very muscular, strong body, which was kind of cool. But when I retired from the sport, I really didn't want it anymore. I didn't really even like it anymore. But what I had was the knowledge to chisel the muscle down to create the look that I wanted. And now at this point, I was able to achieve something that is very difficult to do when you're competing. And that is, I was able to sustain my body composition. So I got it to where I wanted, and then I was able to just live it with joy, with ease, just live that body composition because I knew how to do that. I know how to build muscle. I know how to chisel it down. I know how to get lean. I know how to stay lean. I know how to implement my life and have a bit of fun and still be able to sustain it. And that also set me apart from a lot of other people in Gold's Gym Venice because then I was the trainer that was always in shape. A lot of people, they get in great shape, but they do it a couple of times a year, but staying in shape while living a life and not being neurotic and OCD, don't see that many people doing that. So that is kind of, and I was able to do that because of what I understand about the way the body works. And that is how I coach. So as a side note to just mention my coaching a bit, I've been successful in my coaching business because I've never labeled myself. I've never been a keto coach. I've never been a carnivore coach. I've never been a zone coach. Over the last 40 years, I've seen a lot of these fad diets. Some of them, they've got some validity on them. Most of them don't have any sustainability to them, right? But I've never coached them. I can explain them. I can do it, but I've never hung my hat on any of them. I've always coached from a place of truth and fact as we know it. Hmm? Well, if you coach from a place of truth and fact, you can be pretty confident and you'll always get results. And you can always show people how to sustain their results. And it just is not that difficult. But there is a huge amount of information and education that is, was locked away in me, enabling me to coach like that. Um, so I was in Gold's Gym Venice 25 years, then moved to Eagle, Idaho, with my husband. We moved here, I forget the year, but 8 years ago. And I finished writing my book, When Calories and Cardio Don't Cut It. And then I left my business. I had my business for 25 years. I left my business. So I have a fantastic gym here, but I started building everything online. And so I built this app and I started building my programs. I started putting my knowledge into these online programs and I kind of threw them out into the abyss. And then COVID hit. And then I had people reaching out to me from Southern California wanting to work with me again. Everybody became very comfortable on Zoom. And so now my business has morphed into, I still do some personal training, like one-on-one, but most of my work is online. And what that's enabled me to do is reach so many more people. And although we always thought, right, we always thought that one-on-one was the gold standard, and to a large extent, it absolutely is. The accountability and everything that goes with that. But what I am finding is the small group coaching is really, really powerful. You get a group of like-minded people together, even on a screen. They don't have to meet. It's a really powerful experience. But I continue. I coach from a place of truth. I coach from a place of fact. I coach physiology. And what that allows me to do, and the freedom of that, is when new information comes in and that the research, and once I see them as valid, I can implement them into my coaching. Whereas those coaches that always have, hung their hat on being a keto coach or a carnivore or a plant-based coach, they kind of get left in the dust, right? When the fad changes. So I put that down to my success as well because I've never coached from a bias. I simply coach on how the body works. And, for a while there, I was definitely labeled as a weight loss coach, which didn't sit that well with me because, I can teach weight loss in my sleep, upside down, back to front. I know weight loss. Like the people that come to me for weight loss, by the end of being coached by me, they know more about that than 95% of the personal trainers and gurus out there. But what my education allows me and what my research has allowed me, I coach teenagers. I can coach men, women. I can coach every single goal type because I coach from fact. I coach physiology. I coach on how the body works. And when you see how the body works, you see the pathways. You see, oh, we want to be on this pathway, so we use this. Oh, I want to be on this pathway, and you can accomplish several goals at the same time. So losing fat, building muscle. Everybody thought, oh, you can't do that. Of course you can do that. Two different pathways. It's fine. Now, being 58, I feel like often my clients have followed me through my life. So when I was competing, I had competitors. When I was, finished competing, I was still dealing with competitors and people that were on stage and needed to be visually, on point. And then as the time's gone by, it's morphed into, helping people deal with the approach of midlife, the during it and the aftermath of it. And, my clients are both male and female. I've never been 100% female or 90%. It's always been kind of 60-40 split, which is pretty cool. And that's because I coach body composition for every goal type. It just seems like right now my niche is midlife and beyond. And I'm sure when I'm 75 still doing this because that's the plan, my niche might be, coaching outliers in the golden era. But I hope that explains my story. My own journey of building muscle, losing muscle, getting leaner, and sustaining what I want and living that with joy and ease is something I think that most people also want to know how to do. Um, Traveled all over the world, built different businesses, and yet my passion and dedication to understanding body composition, health, and longevity remains just as fierce as it was back then when I was 17. So hopefully that explains my journey. And um, if you want to work with me, if I now sound like somebody that you can relate to, that maybe I can inspire you, then please reach out and we'll see how we can work together.